You can take care of both the sessions, huh?
Yeah, sure, sir. Let me just live stream this and then I will start the session.
You made me, I think, co-host, so I will do this admitting.
Yeah, you can keep adding. I have made.
Yeah. I'm doing that.
So I think let's begin, Shalini.
Yes. Hello everyone, a warm welcome and very good afternoon to one and all. I welcome all the speakers, audiences to the second day of Gender Equality and Women's Rights Sensitization and Empowerment, an international webinar series which is organized by Institute of Chemical Technology, Mumbai, India, and in association with Indian National Young Academy, that is INIAS, INSA, Government of India, and Global Young Academy, which is our office is based in Germany, Halle. And this event is also supported by TechWhip. So I hope everyone enjoyed yesterday's session, and today is our second day. And it was so interesting that we just started, and the yesterday's session with wonderful encouraging thoughts from our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Pandit, who has a great vision and his valuable advice and great efforts to end inequality and bringing the equity and equality. Then we had Professor Raula Inglesi from South Africa, a great international speaker as well as a leader, who through her own practical based experiences shared wonderful quick tips or guidelines, rather I would say, towards expectation for balancing responsibility, especially for a women scientist in women's life. And then followed by Professor Ashutosh Sharma with his enchanting magical talk, covered entire session on overall gender equality, and there are various ways to bring that through various scientific initiatives. And he also introduced some of the schemes that are initiated by Department of Science and Technology to empower women scientists. So with this, I welcome you all to the second day session on and today we have with us Professor Mary E. John, who is currently a senior fellow and professor at the Center for Women's Development Studies, New Delhi. And this institute is supported by Indian Council of Social Science Research. She has been also a great leader by serving as a director of the center and also deputy director of the Women's Studies program. And not only this, basically she is from Jawaharlal Nehru University. She has also studied from University of Pune and University of California at Santa Cruz, USA. And not only this, she has been teaching, writing, speaking extensively on only one topic, and that is women, gender, and feminist issues for 3 decades or more than 3 decades, and known internationally and nationally. So she has not only this, but in this special area, she has been conducting a range of field-based researches, and especially with the themes related to family and marriages. And she has a great collaboration with not only national bodies but also international organizations like IDRC Canada, UN Women, UNFPA, and Ford Foundation. So I think we are privileged, madam, to have you with us, and with just short notification, you joined us, and I welcome you once again. And over to you, madam, please. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Shalini and Professor Devarajan for having me. It's really a pleasure to be able to address all of you who are part of this gender sensitization program. I know I have done lectures, as you introduced me very, very generously, and it's true, I have spoken on many, many platforms and many times, but I'm still relatively new to having to speak to a screen rather than speaking to actually people. And when I do these kinds of lectures, I usually look forward to having a more interactive space, you know, catching the eye of some of the people who may be a little tired after lunch. Now, I cannot be quite sure who all are you out there. And it's a bit of a challenge, and I can't be as interactive as I would have liked. And I hear that you had a wonderful session yesterday and covered many, many significant topics. So I thought that today, since my field is gender, I thought I would spend a little bit of time actually talking to you about this term itself, what this concept of gender is all about. Is it the same thing? Because very often you will hear the word being used as though it was the same as women. You know, when we talk about women, when we talk about gender, what's the difference really? So actually the interesting thing about the term gender is that it's more than women. It's actually referring to everyone. In fact, one of my questions to Dr. Shalini was, are there going to be men in the room? Is gender sensitized? Very often we think gender sensitization is for the girls, you know, for them to sort of learn how to take care of themselves, protect themselves,
We have men
deal
with
with
us,
harassment.
boys with us, madam. That's a very
I'm
good
sure.
thing. Yes.
Yes. So when we use the word gender, we actually mean it in an inclusive way. We mean that it's about the relations, the structures, the differences between genders. And in fact, one of the interesting questions I may raise it for you, you may decide whether you want to answer it or not, is, are there in fact only two genders? Are there more than two genders? It's a big question today. It's a question in the science. It's a question in social science. It's a question in everyday life. So broadly speaking, then, gender is about the sets of relationships that, in a sense, socialize us and make us feel as though we have to identify as men and women in society. So this is the broad sense. So it's as much about what makes a man, or what makes for the idea of being a certain kind of man, as much as it is about the idea of becoming a certain kind of woman. So it's not, in other words, the equivalent of simply saying women. And this is a very, very important point. And you may have heard of the famous French feminist philosopher called Simone de Beauvoir, who wrote a very famous book called The Second Sex. And very interesting that she called it the second sex. The second sex is women. The first sex are men, because men get to be number one most of the time. So she gave it that title, Second Sex. And there is a very interesting slogan in that book, which has become a very well-known slogan, which is, one is not born, but becomes a woman. This is a very well-known, and much of her, it's a very big book of 700 pages, where she talks about the many different processes. In other words, we are not born into our identities. It's not a simple biological fact. Gender, in fact, is very often in the English language is distinguished from sex, where sex implies biological difference, right? The differences of genitalia, the differences of, hormonal, chromosomal, secondary characteristics, which are also themselves extremely complex. We'll talk about that in a while. And gender, which is thought of as a social attribute, a social mode of identification. And the interesting thing is, what is the relationship between the two? Does the one automatically, I think for a long time, people assumed that if you're born, a girl, you'll become a woman. If you're born a boy, you'll become a man. It's just a matter of time. But in fact, it turns out to be actually much, much more interesting and more complex than that. So this distinction between sex and gender is also very much a part of what we need to understand in terms of what gender is. And so if I may add to what Simone de Beauvoir said, she said one is not born but becomes a woman, but I would add and say one is not born but becomes a man. So imagine all the socialization processes that society makes us go through from the time we are born. And in fact, this is another interesting fact, that it's a very central aspect of one's identity. Usually when somebody has a baby, and this is not just true in India, it's true in most parts of the world. When somebody has a baby, one of the first questions that you ask, you don't ask, oh, is the mother feeling very tired? Did she have a good time? We'll come sometime and see the baby soon. What is usually the first question we ask? Is it a boy or is it a girl? It's very interesting, it's like almost before we want to know whether the mother is, happy or exhausted or whatever else. So this, and supposing I were to answer, supposing somebody asked that question and the person were to answer, oh, it doesn't matter. The baby is healthy. The baby is sleeping well. The baby is feeding well. Why do you want to know the gender of the child? Supposing somebody were to answer, you would feel extremely anxious. You would feel extremely strange. Supposing somebody, you were to, you were to be with a child and you didn't know what the gender was, it's an indication of how deeply we actually think about gender as an aspect of our identity. And a source of anxiety then also in terms of whether we think we are behaving according to the gender or the gender stereotype that is expected of us. And this is again not specific to any country. In the Western world, for instance, as soon as a baby is born, you give pink clothes if it's a girl, you give blue clothes if it's a boy, right? So almost immediately because with babies it's very hard to tell, right? So immediately this need to sort of mark the identity of a baby onwards. And if you notice, and all of you can reflect on this in your own socialization, whether it be in your family, whether it be in your school, whether it be on the playground, think of the multitude of ways in which you're constantly being told to behave like a girl or behave like a boy, right? If a girl is talking too loudly, if she is very aggressive in her behavior, she'll be told, girls don't behave like that. Don't be. And if a boy is very, shall I say, cries very easily or wants to spend a lot of time in the kitchen, then she'll similarly be told, no, boys don't behave like this. So if a girl wants to play with a gun or if a boy wants to play with a doll, we will all be disturbed. And why are we disturbed? Because it's no longer fitting in terms of the kind of gender process that we think we should be going through. So what is very interesting, therefore, is that there is definitely a gap between so-called biology and the whole social process that makes us become men and women. And society, if you think about it, spends a lot of time pushing us and nudging us and encouraging us to go one way rather than another. So gender, when we say gender, we are referring to all of this. We are referring to the sum total that touches everybody's lives and in many different ways. There is no one, shall I say, mode in which gendering, as we use the word as a verb, gendering doesn't happen in one way. It doesn't happen the same way in, say, European societies as in Indian societies, or even in North India or South India, or urban or rural, or in pre-modern times compared to modern times. These processes have been going through many, many changes. So that itself is very fascinating to think of the many, many different ways. If you think of, if you see pictures, for instance, of kings and queens from earlier eras, you look at Maharajas from, say, 300 years ago, you look at the colorful dress, you look at the jewelry, you look at all the things that the men, the kings and the emperors are wearing, and you imagine if a prime minister today were to dress up like that, we would think something is wrong with that man, right? So, think about it, and yet that was the way men were in those times. Women too, the modes of behavior and what was considered, again, has been through profound changes. So gender is a very fascinating term to help us think about the extent of all of this. And the most fascinating part is, for a long time we thought, okay, biology is more or less fixed. Biology doesn't change. You have to have XY chromosomes or XX chromosomes, or you have so much of, female hormones or male hormones or whatever. But actually it turns out that, and there's a lot of fantastic research in the sciences, in neurology, in biology and so on, which is actually now examining, can we actually determine what are the actual ingredients, if there are any, in a biological sense that goes into being female as distinct from male. And there's a huge, I can't spend too much time on that, huge debates on that. It's not as simple as we might think, because even I as a woman also have male hormones. Men also have some female hormones. Over a lifetime, those proportions keep changing. There are lots of debates then in terms of what exactly goes into the masculine or the feminine. And even more fascinating, we have many examples now, more so I think visible than before, of people who believe that they were born in the wrong body. In other words, they feel that the body they were born into and the gender they believe they are not the same. So we hear from men who say that I think I'm really a woman. My sense of self is that of a woman. I may have a male body, I may have male sexual organs, but actually my sense of myself is not that of a man. And of course, we have the Hijra community and so on in Indian history as an example of that. But the world over, we now have more and more examples. And similarly, there are women who women, as I would say, people who are born women, who are assigned female at birth, who say over a life, as they grow up, they say, actually, I think I'm not a woman. I think I'm a man in my own understanding of myself, and they wish to then change and become men. So we have transgender today, as it is called, which is more and more acceptable. Many of us find it hard to accept because it goes against our own, maybe our own understanding of gender. And so it actually opens up a space within which we may recognize that there may not just be simply two genders, male, female, man, woman, but actually that experiences of gender may be multiple and also transitioning. So gender, when you use the word gender sensitization from now on, recognize that it has all these dimensions, that in fact, we must become sensitized to the many different aspects that go into actually saying there's nothing simple or straightforward in saying I'm a woman, I'm a man. These are actually ongoing processes, and they themselves are always in a flux, as it were, rather than fixed. So having said that, I want to now move in the little bit of time that I still have. I thought I should tell you a little bit more concretely about, since this is about gender inequalities and we are a very gender unequal society, there's no two doubts about it. I mean, I'm very excited to see, you know, in an Institute of Chemical Technology, I'm looking at two women here, Dr. Padma and Dr. Shalini, and I don't know 20 years ago whether you would have had the positions that you did in this institute. So these are all examples of gender transformation that are happening even in places like this. So in a gender, however, even a country like India, which we say is very patriarchal, is not friendly to women in public life in many, many ways. We know this. I don't think I have to argue with you about that. Nonetheless, actually the story of gender, I would like to suggest to you, even in the Indian context, is very interestingly multiple too, and multiple in terms of different kinds of institutions. So the more troubling aspect that I want to talk, some are troubling and some are less troubling. The most troubling, I think, or the one that we experience on a daily basis very often is the aspect of violence. I think many of you, I don't know again how many of you are in the room and so on, but you would be aware of the amount of violence that does happen. It's in the newspaper. Sexual harassment in everyday life is something any woman, even at my age, I'd still encounter it to some extent, to much less than before. The kind of harassment you experience on an everyday level. Here, I want to say that we heard about the Nirbhaya, that was the famous case in December 2012, the horrible rape case that happened in the city of Delhi and which brought lots of people out into the streets. So violence is something that we do talk about. It's something that we do associate with women. And I think we recognize the degree to which women are vulnerable to all kinds of forms of violence. But here too, I wanted to say that there are some expected and some not so expected aspects of this violence. And if you had been if physically we had been in the room, I would have asked you a question or two, but I can't do that now. One of the questions I would ask to my audience when I have these discussions with them is whether you think one of the, when it comes to cases of rape, the Indian National Crimes Records Bureau under the Home Ministry records all the crimes from the police stations, all the crimes that get registered as FIRs in the police stations are added together every year. There is a totaling of all the crimes in the country, and there's a section on crimes against women. And within the crimes against women, rape is one of the major categories. There are others as well, like dowry, harassment, sexual harassment, and so on. And the question I would have asked you all is the major the differentiation between two kinds of rape is the standard. It's a standard thing that is done across the world, is known to the victim or not known to the victim. In other words, stranger rape versus what is called acquaintance rape, somebody you know, however you may know, from your family, neighborhood, friend, boss, teacher, whatever, any range of person you know versus an unknown person. And you know that the Nirbhaya case was a classic case of stranger rape. She had no, she didn't know them, they didn't know her when she went into that bus that night. So the question I have is, do you think that there are more cases of stranger rape or more cases of rape known to the victim? And most people answer me correctly. They do say that, yes, they think that there are more cases of known to the victim. But when I tell you, the shock that almost everybody experiences when I say, what do you think the percentages are? What proportion of total rapes are, you think, stranger and known to the victim? Then the shock is that in 2013, that is the data at the time, right at the time of the Nirbhaya case, the data was 98% known to the victim and 2% stranger rape. The kind of rape that Nirbhaya went through and suffered and died for is just 2% of the national average. Think about that. So that is, you know, and I know everybody's surprised, nobody believes this, but this is actually, these are the cases, mind you, these are the cases that come to the police station. These are the cases that are lodged as FIRs. And I ask you, I push you a little further, you can imagine how easy or difficult it is to lodge an FIR in the police station. And imagine how easy or difficult it would be to lodge a case against somebody you know versus somebody you don't know. Think about it. Which means, after all, I'm only talking about recorded cases. I'm not talking about actual cases on the ground about which we have no idea. We don't know how many cases happen because many cases never get reported. They're hushed up, or the person, you know, whatever the reasons may be. So imagine it'll be much tougher to go to the police if it is your uncle, or if it is a boss, or if it is somebody you know, especially if it is somebody you trust or somebody who has power over you, right? So actual number of cases on the ground will be even more actually people known to you, because the stranger cases, people unknown to you, will be that much easier to report. So I put this out to you only so that we rethink, you know, because we are all socialized. I was socialized, even my own reaction to my, you know, people around me, young people, we all say don't to girls, don't go out at night, don't talk to strangers. Isn't that what we keep saying? We never say, please watch out with people you know. Please watch out with people you trust and love. They too can do a very wrong thing to you. We never say this, right? We all think that the dangerous thing is somebody hiding somewhere in the dark, you know, at night. And actually that is not true. Those are not the most dangerous places to be. Unfortunately, it is people in places, in institutions, in Mumbai, in fact, the Majlis is a very, in fact, you should call somebody from Majlis sometime to give you a talk. Flavia Agnes is a very well-known Mumbai lawyer, has done excellent work. They did a very interesting study after the Nirbhaya case on cases in Mumbai. And they made the most painful discovery that cases of rape by family members are more than cases of stranger rape in the city of Mumbai. It's very, of course, extremely troubling, because we think of families are spaces of protection, spaces of care, spaces of love, spaces of safety, right? We always think the outside is the unsafe space and inside is the safe space. So I'm just telling you this so that you think carefully and rethink what we think is the violence that we go through. Now, let me give you some good news. Some good news is in the realm of education and higher education. One of the most remarkable things about India is that women, young girls, are entering schools and colleges more than ever before. And especially higher education has seen tremendous expansion. At the time of independence, there were about 1,100,000 students in all the India's colleges in 1950. And out of that, 10%, that is to say 10,000 students were women, just 10%. By the year 2000, that number had increased to 40%. Today, that number is 47.6%. This is, I'm giving you data. I've not used a PowerPoint just to make things simple for everyone. But if you want to check the data, please go to the All India Higher Education Survey. It's called the All India Survey of Higher Education. It's brought out by the MHRD. Every year they bring out the data based on reporting by all the colleges, universities in our country. Of course, there are huge differences. So 47.6 means almost 50%. Now, of course, is an average, and averages, as you all know, can hide as much as they reveal. So yes, an institute like yours, I'd be curious to know, probably an institute of chemical technology may not have more than 20%. I don't know. What would be the breakup, the gender breakup, as it were, in your institute? I can't say. You can tell me that. It may be less.
35%.
How much?
35.
35. That's very good. That's excellent, actually. Very good. So IITs, of course, it's less. Our IITs only admit maybe they should be having a reservations for women. I think they have only 15 or so. But there are many institutes, and not just B.Ed. We think, okay, B.Ed colleges are full of girls. But no, it's actually many major state universities and so on also have considerable number of women going. So this is one of the remarkable things, I think, that it means that young women, families want their girls to gain an education. At this point in time, it's about 25%, the so-called gross enrollment ratio. That is to say, in the 18 to 23-year age group, about 1 in 4 men and women are in some higher education degree. That's not a bad figure. In the Western world, it's about 50. That's really not for a poor country like ours, actually, that's not a bad figure at all. And in urban areas, it becomes 35% or so. So that's really not bad. So there is this interesting, very positive aspect. But I do want to end on a slightly more troubled note, because I see and I speak in a lot of colleges. I live in Delhi University, which means I'm surrounded by young people, girls and boys both, which makes me feel very positive. But the question is, what happens after your degree? What happens when you leave your college? What happens when you've got that degree in your hand, you've passed the exams? What happens then? And here, unfortunately, the Indian data is very poor. We have one of the lowest employment rates in the whole world. Only West Asian countries have worse rates than us. And we don't like to be compared to Saudi Arabia, surely not. We surely don't want to. So, and just to make sure it's very clear, we are talking about very low participation in urban India. It's in fact lower than rural India. In rural India, women are working in the fields, maybe as cultivators, maybe as laborers. So there you have upwards of 30% perhaps women working, okay? But in urban areas, it's around 15, where men are 50%, others may be in studying, or they may be older and so on. Amongst women, it's 15%, that's 15. And the number one source of employment in urban India is school teaching. Number 2 is paid domestic service, the boys, the servants who come to our homes and clean our. Much lower down are the media, the finance, the technology, and all these other sectors employ tiny proportions of women. So my fear is that even when you have 35% women in your institute, I don't know how many of that 35% actually find jobs later, and whether they are well placed, or whether marriage and other kinds of demands on women actually get in the way. So I want to end on this note of saying we're a funny country. We are capable of terrible violence. We are capable of sending our girls to school and college, but we also have a job market which is very unfriendly to women. I think families would like to have girls work, but unfortunately we don't have the kind of market. Markets are male biased. I can say quite simply, the gender bias is very biased towards men, biased in favor of men and biased against women. So when we think of gender and gender sensitization, I want to end on this note of think about the many different aspects that we must encounter, that we must challenge, that we must support, and so on, if we want a genuinely gender equal world for ourselves. So thanks very much, and I look forward to any questions and discussion.
Wow, madam, mind blowing. Like I was speechless and I wanted to listen to you more and more because, we are scientists. We have been doing scientific studies in our lab. We are busy with all other things, but social studies and the data and the facts that you were sharing, wow, they are like amazing. And I think a scientist from the scientific background should collaborate with the social
Yes,
scientists, and
yes.
then it will be a fantastic study. And I'm looking forward for that, and I will get back to you and I will stay in touch. So meanwhile, we have some questions, and there is one student who would like to ask the question, but
Sure.
and especially she was hesitant in asking the question, but I told that I am going to keep her name secret. And
Fine, absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
so she asked that some men in the lab tried to sabotage her in her project, and tried to dominate her. And then when she tried
Oh,
to fight against it, they said that she's very aggressive. They tried to boycotted her from the lab. And the sad part of that, the other women who were around her did not support her. Rather, they participated against her with the men who were against her.
that's
So what?
horrible.
Yeah,
No,
and
so is this, so I want to ask immediately, is there no committee in her institute, no gender sexual harassment committee that she can go to complain? This is a
uh,
clear case of discriminatory behavior, intimidating behavior. It may not be sexual in the sense it's not a case of demanding sexual favors, but that doesn't, it's not only about sexual favors. It's any form of discriminatory behavior that makes her feel intimidated, that makes her feel what is called, creates a hostile environment. That's the definition we use
mm,
for also a situation which becomes unbearable. And it's very sorry. I'm very sorry to hear that women are capable of giving support, but sometimes I'm sorry to say we also identify with men, those who are in power, for whatever reasons, which we should investigate very carefully why women's often do not wish to support other women,
yes,
do not want to
actually,
stand up for
it's
that.
it's
And
also
I'm
the
sorry
matter.
for this student. I want to tell her, please look for other forms of support. Please make a complaint, because life in labs are very, in fact, that's one of the things we discovered when I was in the Saksham committee. We discovered when we did a lot of investigating of the conditions on campuses, we discovered that the science departments were even worse than the social. Sorry to say this, I don't mean to tar everybody with the same brush, but sciences and spaces like labs and so on, many students said these are not safe spaces for us. In the
Uh,
social sciences, it's sometimes, when the supervisor says, come to my home and we can discuss your MPhil at home. Those are the forms that these kinds of intimidation can take. But in the sciences, there are many, and of course, funding in the sciences, there are so many avenues that make it very hard to speak out.
yeah, and she also adds that when she tried to complain, the person was so powerful that he made other people to be very scared that if anybody goes against him and support her, he will take care of everybody. Like it was like a very different
That's
thing.
power. That's male
Yeah.
power. Absolutely, absolutely. No, I'm very sorry to hear it, and I hope maybe you, all of you, in part of your program, can think of ways to strengthen women who want to raise their voice.
In our institute, we have a sexual harassment or women empowerment committee, but today's audiences are from across the different
Yeah,
institutions, from
yeah.
different places, from different countries. So we have a huge audiences. Well, I have another question to pose to you, madam.
Yes.
Any sexual act against women's wish is rape. In marital relations, also this happens. So what is your opinion or comment or advice to the women, particularly who face such problems?
So any sexual act is not rape. Okay, let's be very clear. It has to take the form of penetration. It used to be peno-vaginal penetration was a standard definition in the past. So if somebody just touches you in an uncomfortable way, touches my breast, that's not rape. But the definition of rape since 2013 has been expanded. So there are other, anal and other forms that also are now defined as rape, because otherwise you had some horrible forms of violation which didn't fit the definition. But so no, so there is a distinction between sexual harassment, molestation, and rape. So all of them are not the same. However, I think the latter part of the question is the more important question. We did modify and create this criminal amendment bill that modified our rape laws in 2013 to expand the definition of rape. But we did not, even with a lot of deliberation, a lot of pressure from women's movement, they refused to change the marital law. There is what is called exception. That is to say, when a husband demands sexual intercourse from his wife and the wife does not wish to have sexual intercourse and he forces himself on her, it is not considered rape. It is considered his right. As a married man, it is considered an old idea. It has been part of most countries' laws for a long time. But since the 1990s, most parts of the world have introduced a marital rape clause into their laws. We in India have, for whatever reason, not done so. And I think that is a mistake. And it should be there. In fact, in my understanding, a man who's supposed to care for his wife, respect his wife, treat his wife as an equal, if he rapes her, isn't it 10 times worse? Isn't it worst form of violence? That the very person you're supposed to protect and care for is a person you can just treat in this way. So I am in no doubt that it should be there on the books. It doesn't mean that, women will go running to the police station every time they have a very bad experience with their husbands. But it does mean that you're creating new norms of ideas of gender equality within the home and within husband and wife, and that those should be respected by husband and wife both. So that a wife can say no, a wife can say yes, of course. So I do think that the fact that marital rape has been put as an exception in our rape laws is a mistake.
So we have a second question. And is Vishaka Committee and Restraint of Sexual Harassment Committee different?
That's a very good question. The Vishaka guidelines were created in 1996. They were created at a time when there were no laws for the workplace. We had sexual harassment laws for public spaces. We had domestic violence laws. We had rape laws, but we didn't have cases that affected the workplace. It was after a famous case in Rajasthan, the Bhauri Devi case, that in fact, and the Vishaka is the name of the organization that provided support for her case. The Vishaka guidelines were the first guidelines we created in our country to protect women in the workplace. That is to say, precisely the case that we heard earlier. The idea was that every workplace, and mind you, even universities and tech institutes are considered workplaces also, because it's a complicated question. A student is not a worker exactly. What is the status of a student? But nonetheless, even students came to be included in the Workplace Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act. So Vishaka was prior to, was 1996 onwards. We had these guidelines. They were not yet the law. Guidelines means they don't have the status of law. And it is only in 2013, again, after the Nirbhaya case, which I think created such a kind of disturbance and anxiety, that the Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act became law. That is to say, 2013, we have the Act. The Act is somewhat different from the guidelines, in some ways better, in some ways not so good. But it has created the kind of rules and regulations for the formation of committees, for lodging a complaint, for maintaining rights and duties, and whatever, protecting the complainant, and so on. All these sorts of things have been put down. The nature, what is the composition of such a committee, what kinds of acts can be heard by such a committee. For instance, rape cannot be heard by a committee. If there is a case of rape in the workplace, it has to go to a court of law. There is, it is not, the idea behind it is certain kinds of minor cases can be taken care of within an institution You don't have to go to the police. You don't have to go to the law courts when you're facing certain forms of sexual harassment, whether it be someone making the workplace uncomfortable for you, whether it be someone teasing you or propositioning you. It should be possible to tackle it within the institution itself, and certain kinds of punishments, major, minor penalties can be given to the accused if the accused is found to have actually violated. So it was a different level, the more elaborate law-like level that the harassment now has in our country. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, ma'am. We have another question from audience, and the question is, very often women's contribution, whether at home or be it at the workplace, are taken for granted and as an accepted norm for which, if she commands recognition, then the authorities of opposite gender are generally judgmental, labeling that the woman is working for attention, and hence often she is not given a position of prominence or in an event or in committees. And so how does one deal with such a situation?
There was a chat question. I'll quickly answer it. They want to know why was it called Vishaka. Vishaka was the name of an NGO in Jaipur in Rajasthan, and it was the institution that gave its name to the guidelines. It's not the name of a person. It's the name of an institution, an NGO. Okay, let me move to this again. A very, very important issue, very tricky issue, very often doesn't fit. See, very often women undergo experiences of discrimination or feeling, that they're treated differently, that they're passed over in promotions, and it's not exactly sexual. You can't point to the fact the man has not said, I'm not showing you any pornography. He has not sort of propositioned you. He has not done a directly unwelcome sexual act, but nonetheless, he has made you uncomfortable. He's made you feel that you don't count. He's made you feel that in some sense you are less than men and passed you over. So these are definitely, all of these would fit forms of discrimination. They are best, it would be best if in fact one could find a forum within which these could be talked about and discussed and recognized and addressed, so that there is a climate within a workplace or within an institution which says that on the whole you want to encourage women. Women are so few and far between that please encourage women. The extent to which they are encountering harassment, they are encountering the pressures of work at home, which is never shared with husbands to the same extent. Even when women and men are both having employment, it does not mean that the men are doing their share of work at home at all. So this is why we say they have a double, it's like a double shift. It's often described as a double shift for women. So given all this, it's all the more important to find, and women, when they have children, if they have children, all the responsibilities are meant to be on their head. So given all this, it's all the more important for gender sensitization genuine gender sensitization to enter our workplaces, such that it is possible to talk about these things. This person whose question she has raised this, please talk about it in the spaces available to you and find a space within which it can be. It's very hard. I know most of us tend to deny. Men, unfortunately, almost always deny an accusation that comes their way. Find ways in which these kinds of, nowadays we have the Me Too moment, where a lot of issues got discussed online and on Twitter feeds and in so many other spaces. It's a much more positive climate now for discussing these things than ever before.
There is still a long way to go to come to that level, ma'am, and I hope that we achieve that level. We have another question. What is the purpose of Constitution of Grievance Redressal Committee for Women? Sorry, what was that? What is the purpose of Constitution of Grievance Redressal Committee for Women?
Grievance, well, grievance redressal is one thing and gender sex harassment committees are different. You can have a grievance process for anyone. Man, woman, anyone who's feeling that they are being bypassed in some way, discriminated in some way, can go to a grievance cell. And grievance cells are meant to listen to any form. It could be a gendered form, it could be a non-gendered form. You may simply feel even that it's not because of being a woman, but you're simply being poorly treated, you're being made to do work you should not be doing. So that kind of grievance redressal is a prior term. It's a term that pre-existed gender and sexual harassment. Gender and sexual harassment is meant specifically for unwelcome sexual advances, sexual acts, etc. So it has a more specific meaning, which otherwise didn't fit in a grievance. There was no space for talking about those things in a grievance redressal mode. So sexual harassment committees were set up for this purpose. But I know that now there could be a complicated situation where women's issues, they don't know whether to go to a grievance mechanism or whether to go to a sexual harassment committee. And that is a complex question. And again, these are things that we need to think about. And it should be equally possible for a woman to go to a grievance committee if she feels that her grievance is not of a sexual nature. But nonetheless, she has felt discriminated against or passed over or made to do something that was not hers to do.
Yeah, so we have another question. Under gender sensitization cell, what type of activities we can schedule for girls, boys, students?
Yeah, there's lots of things you can do. You can have, of course, you can have people come and give you lectures or like, on the topic. You can have legal experts to come and explain all the questions that you have, for instance, or what is the legal aspect, what is the, what can be taken, what is the, all those kinds of clarifications, all those kinds of things. But you can also have more interesting, you could have you could show films, you could try and be creative. Show a Hindi film, for instance, a typical Hindi film in which the boy is singing and pulling the dupatta of the girl to try and get her attention and, dancing all the, and the girl is not wanting to talk to the boy, but he's going on and on, actually he's harassing her. Think about it. It's actually a form of sexual harassment, but it's considered fun and games, and the girl in the end, she sort of, gives into the boy and, falls in love with the boy. These are, look at our Hindi films. Look at what are they actually, what is the message they're sending out? Are they sending out the right kind of messages? If a boy likes a girl, how should he approach her? Nowadays, many of us are not, young people. We come from very different backgrounds. We're very shy. We don't know what is the right kind of behavior. If you watch these films, we may think the right kind of behavior is to go to the girl and pull her dupatta in order to say hello to her. Surely not, right? So, you could have very interesting discussions on these kinds of issues, on what is the way to live together well, what is the way to make friendships, what is the way to sort of interact with one another, and what are the ways which is unacceptable behavior. So you could, there are lots of things you can do with, and please do those things. Use the fact that you have these kinds of gender cells to make it popular and interesting for everyone.
Yeah, considering the fact that, the environment or surrounding is not very women friendly, there is one audience who is saying that, they are afraid to go to even the gender sensitization cell because, they are really worried because the environment is such that, they do not want to come forward. And even if they come, they mostly the blame comes on women. So that is what is,
that is, I'm sorry, that is true. That is the fault of the faculty. If the climate is so bad and the girl is made to feel like she's the victim, I mean, the blaming the victim is the most common. They'll say, what were you wearing? Why were you there at that hour? And so on. All questions to make her feel that she's the one to blame. We badly need many more discussions on this. Girls should try and find allies amongst other women, and so that, she can go with others with her. Try and collect other experiences, so it's not just your experience alone. Try and have discussions around it before you go to the cell. Try and have a more, looser, open kind of discussion before you go and, blames, taking a case, putting somebody, putting a case on a boy or a man, that's not the first thing you want to do. The first thing you want to do is to actually have a discussion, open up, and explain why you found this unacceptable behavior. Why was this not the way to do things? Create a more conducive environment so that it doesn't become antagonistic right away. But if you find that that's not working, then find people with you that you can actually go to these places and feel that it's, yes, you're not doing the wrong thing by doing that. But we need basically a lot more discussion. These are not things to be hidden away. These are not shameful things. These are part of life.
that's a Fantastic answer, ma'am. There is another question asked by an audience. The audience asks that, considering the environment and situation around and the cases that are happening, including Nirbhaya, so is it a good way to send our girls or daughters to only girl school or just to boys and girls school together?
Oh, no, 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 no. That's no, no. Please send your girls to co-educational schools. I don't want to make it seem like I know I said there's a lot of known people, people around you are guilty of molesting you, but the answer to that is not to protect. You can't be living in you can't be living in a segregated society, where girls are only, I mean, in fact, when we interacted with the college, it was a co-education college, and we interacted with them in terms of what they were doing around harassment issues. Then the funny thing was they told us, we have no problems. We keep the girls and the boys separately. The girls have their class, the boys. And when they go to the library, we have a separate staircase for the girls and a separate staircase for the boys. And I thought, oh my God, this is not the way. This is absolutely so. No, please don't think that segregation is the answer. The answer has to be, and everybody is not a potential, don't think of every person around you as somebody who's going to sort of do something to you. We have to create a positive atmosphere. Schools also have a responsibility. Teachers have a responsibility. They can create a conducive atmosphere, a climate in the classroom where boys and girls can interact happily with each other. And where, if anything does go wrong, if a boy is touching a girl inappropriately, that is told, they understand that that is not the way. And there are very good, guidelines for all of this. We have these guidelines. So the answer is not to shut yourself off in, in a girl only space, because you will have to, at some point, you will have to learn how to live with each other. And I think girls and boys who have grown up in co-educational actually institutions are better off than boys who've only been to a boys' school and girls who've only been to a girls' school.
Quickly, last question I would like to ask, because our second speaker is already with us,
Okay.
and we are just running out of the time. But one question on LGBTQ or gay people, and since there is no discussion or a talk or
Yes.
like people have a taboo about that community, and it is not spoken here also in India and also in the entire world, international level. There are a lot of things going on. So these LGBTQ or gay people would like to enter into women's group, but women problem or LGBTQ problem, they are like totally different problems. So what is
no, that's not true. No. That's
Yes,
a wrong idea. That's quite a wrong idea. We in the women's movement, in fact, have been pioneers. Many of the, in fact, I would say that much of LGBTQ politics in India has grown in close alliance with the women's movement in India. In Mumbai, you have many, many organizations. If there's in fact, if you should get somebody to come and speak to you, there's an old women's organization called Forum in Mumbai. And Forum also has many members who are active in LGBTQ politics. And you should contact them. If later you want any names, I can give you names. So it is not true. It is not true that they're in completely different worlds. Of course, there have been issues. So I think some of us who are heterosexual maybe have felt a sense of maybe, I don't know, we felt homophobic. There is homophobia in the women's movement too. Of course there is, as there is in society. So when we discover that many of our friends are lesbians, we feel somehow disturbed, which we should not be, and so on. But in the major kind of ruling that has happened in our country, that is 377. I don't know if you're aware that Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code was an anti-homosexual code brought by the British, which criminalized same-sex activity in India, especially between men, because they didn't think that there was any same-sex activity between women. So, but it was the women's movement who gave support to the movement against as it was called, the movement against 377. Many feminists, myself included, all of us signed the petition to read down 377, which has now been read down, is now decriminalized in our country. And this is because of the support from feminism. So it's a complex question. I'm not trying to say it's all, everything
It's
is
not
smooth.
possible to answer in a small time or
Small
little
time,
time,
yeah.
because
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is a very
yeah.
big issue and
Yes,
debatable
yes.
thing. We can have another
Yes.
session on only that topic.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely, you can.
thank you
Yes.
so much, ma'am.
You're most
We
welcome. And
are
thank you all. Thank
you.
you, Dr. Padma.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much.
Yes, so I now welcome our second speaker of the day is Professor Ghada Basisani. Ghada, can I hear you? Can you hear me?
Yes, I
Ghada?
can hear you.
Yes.
I'm actually with two devices, so maybe that's why my video is not showing while I'm speaking. So because I want to share my screen through my computer, if you don't mind. But you
Yeah,
you
you
can hear
can
me
share,
quite well,
but
right?
just let me introduce you, and then you can share. Okay, I will let you. Okay. So Professor Ghada Basisani is a very good friend of mine, and we met at the Global Young Academy, and she was a past co-lead in Women in Science group, and currently she is Faculty of Engineering at Ain Shams University, Cairo, Egypt. And she's also professor. Right now, she's professor and head of the chemistry division of her university. Apart from that, she's a great international speaker and leader, and leading at bureau member of the International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry, that is IUPAC. She's a project manager for energy efficiency in Egyptian universities, coordinator for Egypt, Germany, Egypt, Italy, Egypt, Japan collaborative projects on science and technology development funds. She's an active and fellow of Fulbright, Next Einstein Forum, Lindau Forum, and there are many, international organizations in which she has been playing a very key and active role, including the fellow of 3 organizations like Lindau, Nobel Laureate meetings, and European Forum for ALPAC and Falling Walls Berlin. In addition to that, I have seen Ghada writing a lot on work-life balances, especially addressing women's challenges and problems. And she's a fantastic mother and a friend. So with this short introduction, I would like Ghada to address the audiences. Thank you so much for accepting this invitation, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Shalini, for this very nice and sweet introduction. I met Shalini, as she said, at the Global Young Academy, and I have seen in her such a great leader, such a motivational, inspirational person. So I'm very delighted to be invited in such a very nice forum led by her. So thank you very much for your kind invitation, Shalini. And I would like to start my presentation with a term that might be some kind of vague for all of us. We are talking a lot about happiness, so I would like to ask, yeah, what is happiness? How can we believe in happiness? What is happiness defined like? And so we are trying to create our own happiness, and while doing so, we tend to put some priorities, and we tend to think about having like maybe family is giving us happiness, or friends, or whatever. But there are 2 things that maybe would be in common for all of us that we need to define, that 2 things that are preventing us from getting happy or being happy. So these 2 things I found on the very nicely said here is to live in the past and to observe others. So living in the past is always letting us not enjoy the present and not to look into the future, because living in the past would mean that everything I do, everything I am currently trying to solve are like kind of adapted from experiences that I had in the past. It would be fine if I'm still focused on my present moment, but having always the feeling that I might have done something wrong in the past, and that's why it affects my current moment right now, or that would prevent me to develop in the future, that would make me unhappy. Also, another aspect is to observe others, to always be in comparison to others. Do I have the same environment, the same circumstances, this maybe even talking about luck, that people are lucky and I'm not, or so. To have always this kind of comparison, that would make me unhappy. So if I ask you, what is happiness? Define happiness. So in a piece of paper, you would take a piece of paper, write down what is happiness for you. You would find many, many different definitions. Happiness is when you feel good about yourself without feeling the need for anyone else's approval. This is mostly the time when the happiness comes from within, not anyone giving you happiness from outside. And Gandhi even said, happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. So many different definitions about happiness. What we really need to believe in is that happiness is a choice. And with this, I would like to start my presentation today, that we are talking about balancing career and life in a way for us, in an attempt for us to be happy in life. This is actually our main concern, to be happy. Is it by doing more work or having a life or balancing both? Yeah, work-life balance. What does it mean? I want to have a career. I want to make money. I want to be healthy. I want to have a family, raise good kids that are well educated, have loving husband, a nice, also a bigger family. Maybe when we talk about family, it's not only about the family that is a husband and kids, but also the bigger picture, the mother, the father, all the relatives I have. I want to maintain good relationships to everybody. I want to maintain good relationships to my friends, because these are the ones who support me in my life and in my emotions. What about a good workplace? Do I want to make a business? Do I want to have good vacation? So all these terms would arise if we talk about work-life balance. So we women tend to believe that we are multitasking. We would like to have so many different hands, do this, that, everything at the same time. Are we capable? Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Many of us are super women. They can do if they believe. But what we really need to focus on is to have strategic plans for a work-life balance. Otherwise, we would go into stress. So many stress factors are there. We have major causes of stress are pictured here in this diagram. We might have career concerns in terms of, yeah, are they going to lay me down or are they going to keep me? Am I performing well or not? Sometimes I don't even find myself in my environment, in my workspace. Am I assigned a good role? Am I assigned? Do I participate in decision making? Do I have a conflict in my role with others? So many things can cause stress. Do I have a good relationship to my colleagues? Do I have even social support? Does my family support me while being at work? Do I have someone to take care of my children while I'm working? Do I have interpersonal and intergroup conflict in my workspace. So many, or maybe even poor working conditions. Maybe I'm for example, now during Corona, we needed to work at home. Do I have the facilities that can give me support for me to execute properly? So all these things. Sorry, is there a question?
We are asking questions at the end of the session, so we are not
Okay,
checking. So you may continue.
okay, I thought I heard someone. Okay, thank you. So we would like to, or I would like to point out that never get too busy making a living, then so that you even forget to live your life. Not too much exhausted in your life, in your working life, in your environment at work. No, you have to balance out. So while doing your career, while stepping into so many different steps in your career path, you need to nourish yourself with many things. Like, is your career really interesting to you, or do you do things that you don't like? What kind of values can you input in your career? Do you have the skills necessary to execute and to develop yourself? Did you set your own goals? Are you educated enough? Do you need further development in order to achieve? So these things are always in our mind when we talk about career. But what about the family and all these things? Do we have time during all these steps to look at people who really care for us, who really love us? Do we have time for them to make them a part of this? But in my point of view, and what things that I have discussed in many fora before, either in the Global Young Academy or we have also something called the African Science Leadership Program, which is related to African women in particular. We actually had one thing in common, that we always, the biology in us seeks for family, seeks for love, seeks for care and devotion to kids and to our parents and so on. But what happens in the end is that we are so much stuck into this circle of a career that we forget what really matters. We invented kind of a task or a task force that says, well, why not try to include your whole family in your career process? Make them feel with you, make them be part of your steps, because then, only then, they would be supportive, and they would know that when you are not there for them, that you are doing something very important that they know about. So we actually developed this called African Women Will, which is the Women in Leadership Life, which means that we wanted to include the husband and the children in the path of the career of women. We wanted them to, for example, to share. If we have some session like this one, I can tell you my daughter is listening to me right now. I told her, come into my session and listen to what I'm talking about. I take her with me to some conferences to make her believe that what her mother is doing while she's not there is important and can help others, so that she can be proud and not feel that we are not giving enough time for the family. So just the inclusion factor, to include the family into your career. So you need to know what actually counts in order to diminish this stress. You have your work, you have your family, but you also have your friends. And what always comes short in this kind of process is yourself. I believe if you yourself are taken care of, and you do things that matter for yourself, then you would become more energetic, you would become more giving. You can give more to all the rest of the cycle. But we tend to say, okay, we are not so important. What is more important is to show our boss at work that we are capable, to show our family that we can cook, we can do the washing, we can do we can also be at school and take care of the children at home. We should show our friends that we are there if they need our support. All this, most of the time, matters more than ourselves. But this is what I'm trying to show you today, is that maybe it's the wrong way to approach things. If you believe in yourself and you think that you are worth considering or dedicating some time to yourself, you will definitely be more organized, be more productive in the rest of the cycle, and you would diminish stress. So manage your time. Time management is key in all this process. Take some time off in the very early morning and write down many things, the to-do list of the day. Take just a few minutes to write down the to-do list. Make a priority matrix. Prioritize, focus on what you're doing. And when you dedicate yourself to a certain task of this to-do list, then ignore any phone call or any email that is coming in. Minimize meeting times as much as possible so that you can devote your time to the specific task you want. Block out any social media that can be interruptive to your time, And if you have to wait while doing your task for anything, then take this waiting time and use it effectively. By time, some tasks you are doing every day would become a habit. And if they become a habit, then the stress factor would be almost zero. You can also delegate some work. For example, what I find out, or what happened actually to me myself when I was working in Abu Dhabi for some time, I used to like to do like multitasking, and I was living alone with my daughter. She's now 22 years old, studying medicine. But at that time, she was just 10 years old, and I left my husband in Germany, and I was in Abu Dhabi alone with her. So I had to be a mother and a father at the same time. I had to take care of her school, and I had to cook and do the washing and everything. And I had a huge apartment. This is how the people there in the Gulf region live. It's a huge apartment, okay? And I was not used to getting some help, and I was doing all the things alone. And then I found some colleague of mine and saying, the time you are spending doing all this household work, you can spend some quality time with your daughter. So I started to delegate some work, which means that I started to get some people who can help me with that. Okay. It's not only about doing household, also at work. If you are a leader and you have a good team, believe and trust in your team. But this is something I'm going to explore more later. When you work, you should put your work also in some batches. Don't do it at the same time. Your to-do list needs to have some rest in between. If you have like a to-do list out of 5 or 6 things you have to do during the day, don't do them one after the other. Give yourself a break between tasks. Give yourself a break to re-energize, to maybe do something that is fun for you in order to get the energy necessary to do the next step. And above all, learn to say no. If you have, we tend to be super women, or believe to be super women. Okay, we want to do so many things and we are not able to say no. People ask us for favors, we say okay, okay, okay. Yeah, people ask us about for more work to do, and you know, we are good in what we're doing. We can really be achievers. We can really be we are very precise in the way we work, and this is how people like it, and that's why we are getting more work and getting more into other stuff, that we are overwhelmed with so many things, not necessarily things that we don't like, but the things that would take or consume our time. So please stop wasting time. Say no to things that would waste your time and would not necessarily be something value adding for you. And as I said, delegate the work. Delegate, believe in the people who are working with you, trust them enough, and even some motivational words that you can give to them would make them feel worth or responsible also for the things that they are doing. If you have a certain task to do, look around, see who can do it on your behalf. If not, then of course you need to do it by yourself. But if there is someone who might not be so experienced as yourself, give them the chance to develop as well. Be at the same time kind of a support to others who are younger than you, and maybe it's kind of a learning process for you and for them and for yourself as well, because sometimes people do things differently. You would not even think about doing it the same way. So I believe as an educator that when I delegate some work to my master's student or my PhD student to, for example, write a paper, I know that they will not do it in a perfect way, but it's a chance for them to learn. And also it's a chance for me to see different points of view. So delegation does not necessarily mean that you are not able to do the task. I believe it's in the contrary, that it's kind of a learning process, both sides. And wasting your time can also be stopped in this way, because you might use your time effectively in some other tasks while people are doing the things that you were supposed to do. And this is the thing that I wanted to really look into more. You have to take care of for yourself. Take care of for yourself in meaning that you should exercise, do some sports, move yourself from just sitting around all the time. Even, you know, what I started to do is to even listen to some YouTube lectures or so while walking, for example, if you need to prepare yourself for something, for an exam or for a lecture or so. You can always, nowadays, it's very nice to have all the technology incorporated in your daily life. You can do things together, like you can exercise at the same time you listen to your favorite music. Some people are not exercising the way you see here on the slide, but rather go for dancing or so. Something that would take you out of your daily routine, something that would, even if it's just for half an hour, refresh your mind, your emotions, and giving you a better shape, better brain capabilities. This would definitely increase your self esteem. It would definitely make you more productive in the end of the day. And combining this with some healthy food would also, of course, make your metabolism better and have all the healthy issues that you would need for a good work-life balance. Do also dedicate some time, even if it's just for 10 minutes, to just relax, to make some yoga, to make some meditation, for whatever. Whenever you just, you know, calm down, breathe in, breathe out, just, you know, take a time for yourself without anything, even if it, some people do it under the shower, fine as well. You can just, take a shower for 10 minutes, just relax, take off anything that can be destructive in your life. And most important is to get enough sleep. This is something we tend to not to ignore and not to really realize that how important it is in our life. I would like to end my presentation with the term mentorship. What I found also during my career path, that it sometimes, most of the times actually, it's very important to have someone to talk to, someone who might be more experienced, just to guide you, or maybe give some good advice, or even motivate you, give you some success stories that would encourage you to, maintain your energy and to work in a more dedicated and more productive way. We also have peer mentorship, for example, at the Global Young Academy. When we meet each other, we learn so much from each other. Although we come from different countries, from all over the world, we always find ourselves that the challenges we have are challenges that are spread in our academic life, regardless where you come from. We have these the challenges that are maybe related to some goals we set in life, some achievements, some training that we are missing. We can encourage ourselves, we can peer mentor ourselves. Some people of us, like when there is also kind of the north-south tendency to learn from each other at the Global Young Academy. People from the global south would go to the global north and learn how people are doing effectively things there, and so on. So the mentors are very important in our lives. If I look back, I would I wish someone would tell me how important mentorship was in my early career. I had my mother as a role model in my life. She was for 20 years the head of the department, and she was trying always to balance out her life and her work. It was kind of, she left work at work. When she was with us at home, she was our mother. Nothing related to work while she was with us. But at the same time, she would take me with her to some conferences and so on, to see her other side, to see her other identity that is maybe not visible to us at home. So for me, this combination was kind of a role model. But when I grew up and saw, of course, this was something that encouraged me to go into academia. But the academic life has so many other aspects, because you cannot leave work at work. This is really a drawback of the academic life, because most of our work is in our brain. So when you do research, you think all the time about the research you're doing. When you write a paper or so, even if you are sitting with your family, you catch yourself still thinking about the same thing, what is taking your brain at the moment, But we try hard to separate these items, to focus. I attended a very nice course called Improvisation Theater. And although it's the terms of theater and it was kind of a play and how to play with it, it really helped me a lot to separate life and career or my work. Okay. Or to because when you do this improvisation theater, you have to react immediately, to be fully present in the moment, and to react. Whatever comes, you have to react in a proper way. So this taught me a lot, that when my daughter, my little one, comes now, while I'm doing now this presentation, I need to be, now I'm focused. I have to tell her, please leave me alone for some moment. But the moment I finish, I ask her, what did you want? Can I help you? Let's play together, to be just focused and dedicated to whatever you're doing. Have this improvisation thing that you can react to the moment, to at the proper time with the proper words, and be kind. So in the end of the day, I like this very nice statement. There's no such thing as work-life balance. There are work-life choices, and you make them, and they have consequences. With this, I would like to thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you.
Wow, Ghada, why this talk got ended? I wanted to listen to you, and it was such a fantastic talk. Can you stop sharing the slide?
Yeah.
So audiences will ask some questions to you. So I would like to ask on behalf of one of the audiences who asked, generally in academia, you find that there is a lot of gender stereotype, and particularly in developing countries, women or girls are not encouraged for specific, stream like engineering or technology. Although situation is much better or improved in the big cities, metro cities, but still in the rural area, the girls are not considered fit for engineering or technology. So how would you encourage women to go into the STEM?
Well, in my point of view, of course, that STEM is only lacking enough females because of bad teachers at school. I don't believe that there are some gender issues, like people have this stereotype saying that women are not capable to do mathematics or whatever, but it's because having bad teachers, that they are not really believing in girls or women going into mathematics or engineering or even sciences, and I think that we need to start training these teachers. We need to have the TOTs program, because if you train the teachers or they train the trainers, then they would.
Oh, Ghada, wait, you are not audible. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, please continue.
So did you hear me, or do I need to start
No,
from the
it was
beginning?
just for few seconds. It was not audible. So if you can.
Okay, so I was talking about that we need to train our teachers to believe in women. I think this is the key factor. If you have good teachers, then there's no such something called a good or bad subject. We only have good or bad teachers. If the teacher is good enough to simplify mathematics and sciences, you would by default find some women to go into STEM. But because the teachers are so bad, so poor, and they even believe that women are not capable, then definitely you will not find anybody who would be encouraged to go into STEM. We have so many different kids that can simplify sciences and make it even in a very nice way, like motivate the students to go into STEM. But in the end of the day, it's actually the teacher. I think the teacher has a lot of load. And if the teacher is teaching all the kids the same, that they are capable, that they believe in themselves and so on, they would definitely go to at home and tell these to their parents, and even the teachers could ask for parents meetings to encourage the parents to send their kids to STEM education. So I think there is a big responsibility on the teachers. Okay, and this is the very early stage in the career, and then later on, when the let's assume that the girls are now in STEM education, they need to believe that they are equally good as anybody else in their community, and go and be part of the sit at the table. Don't be like backwards or the second row. You need to be first row. Speak their language, believe in yourself, talk, and show that you are able to do all the tasks that they are asking for a STEM educated or educated person. Okay, and then so this would make a good leader. If you have these skills, we need to make use of them. Don't just I have the skills, I keep it for myself. No, you have to show them. Show people that you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, thank you, Ghada. We have another question from Dr. Asha, and who asked that we as a women are groomed to pay attention to household responsibilities, and being a women, we are very sincere, and we perform our best at home as well as workplace. And in all this, we forget ourselves. We pay more attention what others will say if I neglect my responsibility, and and pay attention to oneself. So how to overcome this dilemma? It's a very good question, and I'm sure many working women undergoes this dilemma in day-to-day life.
Yes, I was telling about my own experience regarding in Abu Dhabi, that I started to get some people who can help me with the household, because I just wanted to be more present with my kids and for myself, some to dedicate some time for myself. Okay, but of course it's a big dilemma that what would people say if I don't do this or don't do that. And in Egypt, it's a very similar community like in India. We tend to put a lot of stress on ourselves because of the society. What is the society going to say if we are not performing well? Not performing well in every aspect. We want to be perfectionists in every aspect. So this is, of course, a big burden on us. Okay. But if we can live with the fact that we can say no to some tasks, okay, if we live with the fact that we should minimize wasting time and have some quality time with people, when I talk about quality time, we tend to, for example, do the household while our kids want to talk to us. So we don't do the household properly because we want to listen. And at the same time, we don't really listen to what the kids are saying because we're doing the household. So it's always, kind of torn between two worlds. Okay. So why not, in this case, why not take the kids and let us help us with the household? Okay. Say, okay, we want to play together. Take a piece of cloth and help me with the household. Or for example, when I do a cake or when I cook or so, try to take the kids with you to the kitchen. Of course, if they are so little kids, this is not possible. But after the age of 3 years or 4 years, they would be very happy to help out. But we tend to say, no, they are taking too much time or too much attention. Well, this is maybe giving them a very nice experience to be part of it. And, we also tend to forget that we have partners at home. I mean, a husband or a boyfriend, or I don't know, your partner in life, if you are not a single mother. Why not try to include him or her as well? this is also something very important. We tend to, you know, maybe the tone would make a difference. Sometimes when we talk to men and say, "Dude, you have to do this," they just shut down and say, "No, we are not." You know, it's just kind of. But if we tell them, "Oh, it's such a nice feeling when I see you helping me. It's such a nice feeling that when I see that you are cooking my special meal, or what you are doing this in a fantastic way." It's just the tone, how you approach people, you know. You can take a lot out of people around you that can help you. Again, delegate some work to others so that you be more efficient, that you can do many things. And in this case, people would not think that you are not a good mother, that you are not a good wife or so, because you are including the people around you in the process. Okay.
Wow, that's a
Thank you.
fantastic answer, Gadan, based on your own experience. So another question I would like to pose to you. Would you advise a career break for a few years, especially to take care of children? Because children plays a very important role, and I have seen many women scientists, you know, after the birth of children, you know, they are really not able to manage both work as well as children, and they do not want to be a guilty mom, and then they quit. So do you advise women to take a career break for taking care of children and then maybe come back again? What is your advice?
I can only advise as much as I have done. So, well, actually, I did not take any break. I just took,
You just wait for
no,
some
maybe
time.
this is not completely correct. I
Just
took
5 minutes.
some time off just for 6 months in the very beginning, because it was paid leave. Okay, we have a very nice way in Egypt that when you give birth to a child, you have sometime a paid leave, and then you can take unpaid leave for up to 6 years. Okay, but I didn't want to do this. Not of course part of it is because of its paid leave and so on, and that's why I took this time. But also at the same time, I didn't want to have a big gap between what I have learned and what I wanted to achieve with the things that you know, yeah, what, how can I tell? You know, I think that children, if they grow up in with a mother, with a working mother, they adapt, they become independent, they become confident, because they can say my mother is so and so, and you know, later on they can even be proud of their own mother and so on. So I think what I did is I did not take any leave off, only the paid amount, the paid leave, which was in my case at that time for 6 months, and then I took my little daughter to Germany to study. So I did my master's PhD in Germany, and I had just a little kid there, and I was without parents, without any support from my family. I just had my husband at that time, and we were just a little family, and we didn't know anybody. So this is a really a severe case, you know. So you decide to go for work with a little kid without having anybody you know around you. But this makes us stronger, you know, because then you try to find a way how to overcome the challenge, and make new friends, people who can support you, and then you know, have your career going on. In our communities, I believe in India as well, we have very close family relationships. So this is fantastic. In the Western countries, it's not the case. So when you have so close interfamiliar relationships, you can depend on your mother, you can depend on your sister, on your cousin, or your mother-in-law. You know, we have a community that can be supportive. In the Western countries, it's not always the case. So although I come from Egypt with this community, I decided at that time to go and study in Germany. So it was really, really challenging. What I did is I paid a babysitter. And I can tell you, my salary was 760 euros at that time, and the babysitter's salary was 855. So I paid for the babysitter more than what I was earning. And even I took some part of my husband's salary. And just because I wanted to continue my career, okay, I didn't want to have a gap. And today my daughter is studying medicine. It did not by any means affect her, but in a positive way. She's fully independent. She even appreciates the time that we spent in Germany. She's fluent in the language now, you know, so you can give your child opportunity while working. So take it as an opportunity, not as a way that you are not doing a proper job, or that you need to sit at home to be a good mother. No, you know, in the end of the day, if you decide to be at home for several years, first of all, it would be very difficult for you to go back to work afterwards. It would also be very difficult for you to fulfill yourself. Even if you don't find a job and you decide to be always at home, people get so desperate that they can be even, I don't want to be negative in this talk, but I have so many examples in that I know that they decided to quit job completely, although they had so much power to do so many things, but because of these guilt feelings towards their children, they decided to stay at home. And then in the end of the day, like 3-4 years later, they become so sad, so bitter inside that they were neither a good mother nor a good working person, nor a good wife, nothing. Okay, and most of these cases really end up with not being happy in life. So I don't recommend at all to stay for a child. Maybe for some time, if it's a limited time, that's okay. But then again, make out of this work an opportunity for your child. As I said, I went to Germany. I took my daughter with me. She learned the language. Now she's fluent. She has so many opportunities just because of this time in her life. Okay, thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Ghada. What a beautiful experience you have shared with us. And yes, I'm sure many women scientists having children will get benefited immensely with your advice. And since we are now on time, with time, I would like to thank you very much for your presence and sharing your inspirational thoughts on this occasion of gender equality and women empowerment. And I'm looking forward in future for any help or support for encouraging all the girls and women on this platform. So thank you very much, Ghada.
Thank you very much, Shalini, for your kind invitation. And thank you once again for all the audience for the kind attention. Thank you.
Yeah.
And for participation.
So, friends, before we close and go for a vote of thank, I would like to show you tomorrow's speaker. We have tomorrow at 4 p.m. we are starting on Indian Standard Time, 4 to 5 p.m. We have Professor Chen Un from Institute of Research in Molecular Medicine from Malaysia. She's also a member of Global Young Academy. She's L'Oreal UNESCO for Women in Science National Awardee. Apart from that, she has many awards, but she is also a very famous person with award of Women of the Future Award. So, and then after her talk, we will be having another talk by Professor Nishat Fatima, who is a senior principal scientist from CSIR Central Leather Research Institute. Chennai, and a member of Indian National Young Academy. Professor Nishad has been conducting many programs for inspiring women scientists across India. So it will be very fantastic to listen to these two audiences. So I thank once again all of the speakers of today's session, audiences, Institute of Chemical Technology, Professor Padma Devarajan, Professor Mahanwar, and everyone for being here. And I announce officially to end this session. Thank you very much.
Shalini,
Yes.
what about tomorrow's time?
Yeah, tomorrow we are meeting at 4 p.m. 4 to 5 we have another session, and the link is same link that has been shared with everyone today. It is the same link. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Shalini ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Padma madam. Thank you, Ghada. And
Thank you very
I
much.
look forward. Thank you very much. Thank you, participants, for joining. See you tomorrow at 5 p.m., 4 p.m., 4 to 6 p.m. for another exciting sessions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.